experience where two have truly become one. God is at the center of us, our purpose and vision in His love. We dedicate our today, tomorrow, and always to You, our King. Bless and let there be love in our home. The marriage experience ordained by You alone. The marriage experience. The marriage experience ordained by You alone.
Welcome to the Marriage Experience program with Ayokunle and Bosede Santos, where they explore what it means to cultivate a God-centric marriage, delivering realistic and biblical wisdom, pointers and insights from couples and individuals on the marriage journey. Join them today as they continue the conversation around before the marriage covenant. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Marriage Experience program. This is episode 27.
You're all very welcome. It's good to be with you again.
Yes, and again, we'll never get tired of saying it. This is one of the highlights of our week, and we're so grateful and honored to be on this journey with you. So last week we began looking at a couple of personality types from the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or as many would know it, the MBTI. And we identified, or we talked about how to identify people's natural preferences, which Myers-Briggs divided into 4 areas of personality. And we also reiterated that there is no right or wrong to these preferences. Each one is a normal and valuable human behavior.
And exactly that, and also we stress, if you remember, that though they're all 4 different types, there's no better one.
Exactly.
It's just a different way of
it's
expressing.
just the way
yes.
the person is. And we just only need to understand the peculiarities in order to enable us treat one another with regard. So, and we also we talked about the need to be self-aware. Remember what Johann Wolfgang van Goethe said, that when you treat people as if they were what they ought to be, that you would help them to actually become what they are capable of being.
Yeah, so what that is saying is you are also responsible for
empowering
them, ushering them into who they are supposed to be.
You're part of their destiny journey. You're part of the people who would help them to become who God created them to be. And it all starts with you understanding the quirks, if I may, of their personalities and just treating them, affirming them in their identity and helping them to just live out their personality without. Remember what we talked about, using your right hand, if your right hand is your preferred hand, or the left hand. When you try to use the left hand, there'll be there'll be tension. It's not going to go smoothly. And in addition, to demonstrate how the MBTI system works, we looked at 2 opposite categories, each one from we looked at one that's the INFJ, or as to flesh it out, it's the introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging, and also the extroverted, sensing, thinking, and perceiving. Whereas the INFJ, that's the introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging personality, whereas they seek meaning and connection in ideas, relationships, and material possessions. They want to understand what motivates people, and they're insightful, deeply insightful about others. They're conscientious and committed to their firm values. They develop a clear vision about how best to serve the common good. They are organized and decisive in implementing their vision. The ESTP, on the other hand, are quick, ingenious, stimulating. These are your entrepreneurs, and they're alert and outspoken. They're resourceful in resolving new and challenging problems. They're very adept at generating conceptual possibilities and then analyzing them strategically. This is how the MBTI, in their summary of them, this is how they describe them. And they're very good also at reading other people. They get bored easily with routine, and they will seldom do the same thing the same way. They're quite dynamic in their approach to handling situations. And they're also apt to turn to one new interest after another.
Of course, we'd like to reiterate again that you've listened to attributes of each one of those, the INFJ and the ESTP. We don't want you to begin to slide into that quote unquote trap of going, well, I'd like to be this and that, someone who's bored with the routine. So that means, yes, I'm very good and the ESTP is the way to go. Everyone is the way to go. And what really matters is to understand who you are, what your traits are, what the traits of your spouse are, and then knowing how to handle these traits.
It's important for us to mention here, really, that we are just kind of scraping the surface of all these things. So it's just to pick your interest and to encourage you to go into this, these tests. There, we told you about the 16 personalities, where you can get it, that their website, where you can do the test for free. But if you want more in-depth, analysis of your personality, then MBTI, the MBTI website, they also have their testings there, but I think you pay something for those ones. So it's don't just go by everything that we've said here and jump to that conclusion. Do your own test to find out more about yourself, and when you go through the questions that they use to do this analysis, then don't try and do it as, which is the best answer now. Do it as you are. That's the only way that you can get the authentic result of who you truly are.
Yes, so the website for carrying out the test would be, or the assessment, not a test, is www.16personalities.com. That's the number 16, then personalities.com. 16 personalities.com. Right, so today we'll dive deeper, just one more layer deeper, to see how these how they function in relationships, especially if hypothetically both spouses are those of opposite personality types.
Just like the two that we've been analyzing, that's what we're using as a hypothetical a couple, that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, so in case you're wondering what all these have to do with the godly marriage, all these MBTI and all these theoretical studies, the scripture says in Proverbs 14:8 that the wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way. So it is wise to understand how you think. It is wise to understand how your spouse thinks, why they behave the way they behave. It is very wise, and that helps you to guide your behavior one to the other. Now, in other words, a discerning person understands his manner, he understands his habits or mode of action, which then equates to their mannerisms or personalities. Paul echoes this idea in Galatians 6:3, when he says, "For if someone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. And I quite like how the plain English version puts it. And it says, don't think that you are too important to help other Christians. If you are not very important, but you reckon yourself as being really important, then you are just tricking yourself. If you reckon yourself as being really important when you are not, then you're tricking yourself. In other words, what you think you are is not actually who you really are. And that is a very big trap. So it is good to know, to truly understand who you are, so you know how to how to manage yourself and to manage your spouse as well. Now, this brings us back to the idea of self-awareness, which we mentioned last week. We stated that some of the advantages were improved relationships and personal growth as well. Because relationships are basically two people working together. And if you don't speak the same language, now speaking the same language doesn't necessarily mean you're both exactly the same. You don't have to be the same. Remember, we explained a few weeks ago about think of a choir. You've got different parts of a choir. They're all singing different parts, but they're singing together. When they come together and sing in harmony, they bring out this beautiful sound that's made up of different parts, which in themselves are different. So using such tools as the MBTI, which we believe are gifts inspired by God, is wisdom.
Yeah, so we cannot just say, oh, these are earthly things, and then ignore them. One thing we have to understand is that God loves this world so much that he releases wisdom even to those people who are open to it, those people who function according to his principles. Whether or not they're Christians, God will release it because it is going to help the whole of humanity. So now let's take a deeper look, or at that personality type. I think we're going to just have maybe room to just do one today. Yes. And then we'll finish the other one next week. That's the INFJ, the introverted, intuitive, feeling and judging personality. Let's look at their traits. So the INFJ, we're looking at their traits as it relates to their love life, because we're talking about marriage. So the INFJs, they really value self-reliance. In other words, they are more or less independent when it comes to emotions. They are very independent, and regardless of how strong their relationships are, they still keep that part of themselves, to themselves, so to speak. And they handle difficult situations well because they tend to be emotionally secure and resistant to stress. Though they rarely seek the limelight, their quiet model of tenacity and honesty is quite admirable, and they tend to be selective in their choice of close friends, and more especially when it comes to finding a spouse.
Yeah, these are the people who would tend to study more and look deeper and take a decision. The decision takes longer, to decide on which way to go with a spouse.
Yeah. So perhaps because they know how to find contentment and fulfillment by themselves, so they're usually in no rush to settle for a partner who's less than a good match for them. As much as they are inclined to leave a partner who lets them down, they will still give this person a second chance. Anyone who fails them, they will still give them a second chance. Maybe because of their strong inborn sense of worth, they also don't necessarily feel the need to stay in a relationship that's not working.
You're listening to the Marriage Experience program with Ayokunle and Bosade Santos.
All right, so INFJs are also less likely to say that they believe in one specific man for one specific woman. In other words, Out of the, I don't know how
Talking
many,
about soulmates.
yeah, exactly, I don't know how many
there's
billion
only one
billion people there are on
person for
Earth,
one.
right?
Yeah.
So if that person happens to be someone, I mean, if they live in the United States, for instance, and the person happens to be someone who lives in Japan, the likelihood of meeting that person would be next to zero.
They would tend to kind of see it more as people who are fulfilling purpose together. You know, they've come to this agreement that they are going to work this out and fulfill purpose together.
Now, however, as self-satisfied as they are no lone rangers either. You know, they are quite keen to be in a lifelong intimate relationship, but they won't just get into one for the sake of being in a relationship. So it takes them time to step in, but they are more likely to want something that's lifelong. Once they find that right person, you can be sure they fight for and be faithful for life by establishing genuine and deep connections with the people that they care for. Now, most important to them is their productivity and individual worth. And maintaining this frame of mind is all important to them. They want to ensure that what they do, you know, all the effort they put into the marriage, all this, you know, they study a lot. They put in a lot of work to ensure that this relationship lasts for a lifetime. Now, balancing this self-conviction with a willingness to learn from others help them not to achieve only great things, but also find lasting happiness. Now, though we've talked about them being more of people who are, if you could look at it as people who are deep and within, you know, like we just said, they also reach out to people. They are warm, they're caring, they're honest, and they're also very insightful because of the natural personality they have to dig deep, and they patiently work to uncover their loved ones in most innermost needs and desires. So they're not just the people who operate on the surface. They're deeper than what most other people are.
Yeah. So these personality types also create a deep or rather a depth to their relationships, and they are not the depth of their relationships is you can't just describe it in ordinary terms, because they're sensitive and they're insightful. They tend also to expect or no, not expect. They tend to make their partners feel heard and understood, you know, and they are not also afraid to express their love and the love that they feel for their partner, and they love with all their hearts. Now, one of the things that INFJs find most important is the fact that love isn't a passive emotion for them, but it's an opportunity to grow and learn. And they expect their spouses to also share this mindset. So if you're married to an INFJ, as my husband is, you know that this is who they are. Yeah, you just heard it. I am an INFJ. And relationships with them can neither be non-committal or trivial, because they are intensely passionate in ways that surpass the present moment. And what truly fulfills them is the way that a loving, meaningful relationship matures and deepens over time. And in their heart of hearts, they crave an emotional and even, much more the spiritual connection with their partners. They cherish not just the act of being in a relationship, but also what it means to become one with another person in mind, body, and soul.
So one thing that just occurred to me is perhaps it's a good time to have a practical exercise of what we've been talking about. You know, we've given attributes of who INFJs are, what their attributes are, etc. It's good to be able to tie to somebody, not necessarily your spouse, but a friend or even a relative, a close relative, and see if you can, say you have got a sister or brother who tends to exhibit these, to begin to observe them and find out how these personality traits are managed. How have you managed? I mean, if you have a sister, for example, or a sibling, I should say, who you've been with all your life, obviously, the first thing is, how
it's
have I?
This is the aha moment.
Exactly.
Even that, all right, so that's why she's like that or he's like that.
Absolutely, and that's what we're saying here. So this tool is not just for the marriage, but especially for people who are not yet in a marriage relationship, to use people who are close to your siblings, even your parents, as well. Looking at your parents, studying your parents, and going, all right, so this is who they are, and this is the reason why they behave the way they do behave. In going through that exercise, then you understand their behavior better. And the magic thing, if I can use the word magic here, is that you would eventually know how to handle them a lot better.
How to relate better.
Exactly. So
them,
because you know how to handle them, you then know how to relate to them better, and then you know how to manage, especially those parts that you may have considered very difficult to manage in the past.
I mean, this is also just to remind us that what we have been doing since we started, is just laying a foundation. And these conversations that we've been having are conversations that we had proposed. I don't remember how many episodes back, that these are conversations, or these are things that you should have in place before going, because we're in before the marriage covenant conversation. So this is what we're doing now. And this is part of what we expect to be the foundation of the marriage, the foundation of, your relationship before you go to say, I do, understanding their personality and understanding how to relate with them and how to get the best out of them.
Now, of course, this doesn't mean that if you're already married, then you go and become unmarried and learn the stuff and then get married again. Obviously not. But what we're saying here is, fine, it's always best to know these things before you step into marriage. But if you happen to be married today, it is still a very useful tool to begin to change things. Although, you've lived, you were married for 10 years, and you've always had this knotty issue which you've not been able to get past. This, understanding how this works would definitely help you in breaking those nuts that have been so hard to crack, into cracking into them. So this week we've opened up the world of INFJs and how they show up in their love relationships. Next week, we'll look at yet another foundational principle. We'll be looking at the extroverted sensing, thinking, and perceiving, or ESTP, and then tie things all together with what we looked at today. So we're going to make reference. Just next week, we'll go through a quick reminder of what we've done today, and then introduce the ESTP, and then see how they tie in together. And remember, we're looking at different iterations of all the different personality types. As usual, we'll continue to appreciate your feedback by email at mxperience@lidiosantos.com, mxperience@lidiosantos.com. We also have the recordings posted on our YouTube channel, and the handle is at marriageexperience.com, and that's experience without the E. So it's marriage, XPRIENCE. And we're also on Apple Podcasts, we're also on Spotify, Amazon Music, and everywhere you listen to your podcast. So once again, we're so grateful having you around, and look forward to seeing you next week.
As always, it's been a wonderful, wonderful delight to share this with you, and thank you that, we get to also revisit the foundation of our own marriage.
That's
and
very
get
true.
to understand ourselves better.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you so much for,
Right.
just helping us to do this. God bless you. Have a
have a
wonderful,
wonderful
wonderful week.
Bye.
Join Ayokunle and Bosade again next week on the Marriage Experience as they bring God's truth to help you build your marriage God's way. Till then, remember, marriage is God's idea, and it is a good thing.
The marriage experience ordained by you.